One thing I see a lot is, people come to me and say, hey, can you help me find an importer in the US? And the reality is, we were talking about this earlier, that even if you found an importer, that's not the end. That's just the very beginning. You need a sales solution, distribution solution, marketing solution. And more often than not, we've been talking about feet on the street. To be clear, we're talking about brand ambassadors, which individually are a very expensive proposition and not necessarily a scalable thing. How does somebody bridge the gap there by saying, okay, we recognize we need to do the job of building the brand ourselves. I can't afford to put 10 people in the street. How do they deal with that?
And I wouldn't recommend it. I think brand ambassadors get spread out too thin very quickly, and it is a very big expense. It's about where we put the money. Instead of spending the money you need to spend on a brand ambassador, and about half that spend could be on planes and hotels, probably not the best way to spend money. It's about creating a proposition for the entire three-tier system to have a viable brand that can be grown, that can be scaled, that offers a unique point of difference. And it's a lot better to invest the money in the individuals that are really representing the brand, rather than a brand ambassador that can be a very good salesperson. But the presence of a brand owner, a winemaker, the founder, gets a lot more attention in the marketplace.
Go ahead.
I would also say it's very, very important to think about your business model before you go to market, and particularly about your price. Because if you start with a price that is too low, you can never go up. Something very important to note, you can never raise your price unless you really want to reduce your volume. But starting with the right price that gives you the money to fund what is being talked about here. And I would have to agree with it. At a certain level, a brand ambassador is great when there's enough scale, but that takes a long time to build, and it is an extremely expensive proposition. So if you start at the right price, that allows you to have enough profit to invest in the brand in the ways that your importer and distributor need you to do. You don't have to go that extra mile of the brand ambassador. And something to think about in that is when people think about the supply chain, they say, wow, I give this big chunk to my importer and this big chunk to my distributor, and then I get this. And the reality is, even though they seem like big chunks, those two tiers, especially the distribution tier, do not actually make a very big margin on the bottom line, because bringing the wine to market is extremely expensive. And so making sure you have the right price, therefore you have enough money built into your proposition. And you can always use that money to incentive and to roll your price back a little bit at a time, as opposed to starting low and being stuck with where you are.
I'd also like to add to, and I wholeheartedly concur, is the fact you have to be very focused and relative to your approach at retail. You know, you can't just look at, you go into, I'm headquartered in Chicago, so we have like 12,000 accounts. So you think we'll have somebody talk to us and say, geez, if we could sell, one case a week in each one of those accounts, we could think of all that volume we could do and all the money you could make and the money we could make. Now that's, I'm obviously being facetious, but we've had conversations in the past like that. It doesn't work that way anymore. It has to be so strategic, so focused. But if you can identify the right accounts where you can get sampling, because we have a small brand we're doing that with right now, high profile accounts on premise for the beer product, and it becomes sales and momentum marketing. As we get into one account, we build some velocity. We go to the next account. We may only have 50 accounts doing it, but we have had, that is one way to, to build certainly from the ground up when you're starting something brand new or very small volume.